Yes, Dan.
Thank you, Dr. Groothuis. I'm so thankful to obviously hear from you yet again, and obviously aware of your scholarship in the area of Dr. Schaeffer. I wanted to ask you to comment a little bit more on the topic of doing apologetics in the real world. As you know, sometimes we're confronted with the abnormal world. I think there's sometimes when we may get very pumped to do apologetics and we think everything is just going to be smooth sailing, and yet we are confronted so heavily with this abnormal world and its impacts, and even not just the impacts of just situations, but also on our own mentality. And so if you could speak to that, because I know that you've gone through a tremendous time, so I just want to give you a little chance to share some of that.
Thank you. That's a broad question, but I think it has to do with keeping integrity and fire in your bones for the Lord in the grittiness of life, the difficulties of life. Schaeffer was a great intellect who understood the times and really knew what the church should do. He, however, had something that a lot of apologists don't have, and that was a tremendous heart for unbelievers, because he went through his own crisis of faith after he had been a pastor for 10 or 15 years. He rethought everything, and out of that came the depth of his convictions. But he remembered what it was like to question, and he saw the brokenness of especially people in the counterculture. So he didn't simply try to out-argue them. He wanted to listen to them and creatively respond to them and try to put himself in their shoes to feel what they were going through. And that makes things messy. It's one thing for me to stand up here and talk for an hour and 15 minutes, and then I go back to my room and I think, well, I did a pretty good job, but there's one point I didn't do so well, and then I go to sleep. Okay, I think I've done something worthwhile. It's another thing to sit and talk with an unbeliever for an hour who is spilling his or her guts, and you're not even sure what to say next. I think we need to do both kinds of things, and I want to do both kinds of things. But Schaeffer was really so skilled in the one-on-one. In fact, Os Guinness says that Francis Schaeffer was the best one-on-one apologist and evangelist he had ever seen, and that Schaeffer's writings didn't even come close to how good he was one-on-one. So I get goosebumps just thinking about that. I want to be a person like that. I want to be able to engage unbelievers, care about them, listen to them, and just respond. I'll tell you just a really short story. I was at I just call it a public setting once, and I was talking to a guy, and I said, "You're an atheist, right?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Why are you an atheist?" And he said, "Because I don't want to be a jerk like you." I thought, okay, that's interesting. And I said, I laughed, and I said, "Have you ever heard of the argument from fine-tuning, or the design argument?" "No." I said, "Okay, go to YouTube, watch a video about fine-tuning, just 5 minutes, and see what you think." And I didn't have much interaction with him after that, but I did find out from a friend of his that he did go watch the video on fine-tuning, and it made some kind of an impression on him. This is not the kind of story where I can say, and later he came back to me, we talked for 4 hours, he accepted Christ. I don't have that kind of a story. But I tell it because he insulted me, and I could have gotten very angry about that. I just took it as kind of a challenge to creatively respond to him. So it's messy when you're dealing with people out there in the streets, in the trenches, but it's actually deeply meaningful and enjoyable to put yourself on the line and offer yourself to the Lord for His glory and for the good of these people. I've even talked to people that have just opened up so much. I remember a colleague and I were talking to a woman we met. It was outside of an establishment, and there was a band playing. And we just started talking to her, and she opened up about her doubts about God and how she prayed, and she was worried about her daughter going to school. And we prayed with her. We said, will you take our hands and we'll pray for you? We prayed for about 5 minutes for her. We had just met her half an hour before. and we were witnessing to her. And it's just tremendous, to be able to be in those kind of settings and say, Lord, here I am, let's go for it. Take all my training, all my study, all my yearnings, and let's see what kind of a witness I can have for the Lord. The fact that Dr. Stewart has arisen tells me that I'm out of time, so I will bid him to come. Thank you for listening.